Well, good afternoon, Robin, and thank you for taking time with us today. My name is Coach Andy O'Brien. I am the master coach here at Action Coach Wilco, right here in Georgetown, Texas. We are a business coaching firm focused on guiding business owners like you to have the freedom to grow your business, spend time with loved ones, and also build a solid team. My guest today is Robin Parsons, and I don't want to hack this up, but I believe it's Parafour Innovations.
Parafour Innovations, yes, sir.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you so much, Robin. Why don't we get started? Tell the viewers a little bit about your business and how you got into this crazy business.
Well, the business we're in is building and designing alternative fuel refueling station equipment, primarily for propane and dimethyl ether, which is a new fuel used for bio-based renewable propane. The majority of what we build goes to school districts. Propane-powered school buses now are the #1 sold school buses nationwide, and Texas has the most of any. So they're running the school buses on propane as opposed to diesel or petrol, traditional fuels. The reason for that being largely that it's very much cleaner than the diesel engines are. It's much quieter. There's less fumes that the students breathe in. There's been a lot of studies that show that there's tremendous benefits beyond just the tailpipe emissions. It's also, in Texas, it's far less expensive to run a bus on propane than it is on diesel. Currently, wholesale fleet propane prices are less than half the cost of diesel. So Georgetown, for example, in Williamson County, we built a station for them. They have 38 propane buses as of 2 years ago. Leander ISD also has them, and then several of the Williamson County fleet vehicles also run on propane.
That's incredible.
It's interesting. We have been doing this with Parafour since 2008. My background comes from originally from military, 14 years ex-military, Air Force and Army. When I got out, I got into the propane business, and I've been involved in working on propane vehicles and refueling systems all over the world, about 22 different countries.
That is incredible. Oh, that is just wonderful. How does that, I'm asking because I'm originally from North Iowa, where, it's constantly 20 below zero. How does this type of propane work in the colder climates?
Extremely well. Propane has a vaporization point of minus 44 degrees below zero. So for the traditional system, which you may have seen perhaps on tractors as a child in Iowa, it used to be quite common. Farmall, that's the only one, John Deere, most companies for a long time, starting in the 30s and the 40s up through the 70s, tractors were available running on propane. It was a non-controlled fuel. It wasn't rationed during the Second War, so it became very popular. They liked it so much it continued production for many years. But it starts and runs very well, in fact, better than petrol or diesel in cold climates, because it has such a low vaporization point.
Well, I remember the forklifts and vehicles like that ran on the propane, but I grew up in the moving business, in my dad's business. So the diesel motors, when it got to 20 below, those old 70s and 60s trucks, they just did not like it very much.
That is correct. So propane is a big advantage there, and largely why it's used in medium-duty vehicles all over the world. In the US, most of the current vehicles since about 2008 are actually OEM fitment with a liquid phase fuel injection system that they run on versus a traditional put something onto the engine in the aftermarket. They're extremely clean, extremely efficient, very good fuel economy. So it's a very different system than what most people remember.
That is wonderful. Well, thank you very much. I'm sorry I went off script, but I love that information. I still have connections up in that area, and maybe we can help make a couple. But you talked about the school system, and I believe what I heard you say was between the traditional gas and diesel models versus the propane models, there's a significant difference in usage and cost. So looking at that, is that your only target market that you go after, or who would you say is your other best customer?
No, that's not our only target. That's just what's most common here in Texas, in the biggest volume in the US right now as far as the vehicular use and auto gas use. Now, we do not build just vehicle dispensers. We build dispensers that are used to fill cylinders, forklift cylinders, RVs, really any application. What we have is a unit that if you've ever, for example, have a propane grill and you took your grill bottle somewhere to get filled at a Tractor Supply or somewhere like that, it's an adequate, functional, safe, but very crude and simple device. It's basically an aluminum box with a mechanical meter in it and a hose. It's wadded up inside. They take the cylinder, put it on a scale, and fill it. Ours is actually a ETL, UL listed, weights and measures approved retail fueling dispenser, which can be used in a variety of applications. So the look and the feel and the handling is very much like what you'd see on any petrol or diesel dispenser.
Excellent. Excellent. Rudimentary is a great word. That is a great word. Thank you. So tell me, what has been the biggest impact that COVID-19 had on your business over the last year?
It was a big challenge. It slowed down sales substantially. A significant part of what we do is export. We have a very large project right now with Canada. Haven't been able to go up there and do training or any sales work with the distributors that we work through there for over a year now. There's quite a bit of pent-up demand. We're starting to get inquiries again. So it impacted sales significantly on what was our forecasted sales, our projected sales. But in fact, we wound up slightly higher for the whole year overall in sales than we were in the previous year, and one of the best years ever. But there were a couple of quarters that were pretty tough, and we were very grateful for the support both from Williamson County and from the federal government.
Excellent. I love to hear that you ended up in the black by the end. So what would you say was your top one or two actions that you took to make a difference in your business during that time frame?
We are considered a critical industry, so we never closed. We never laid anybody off. We were able to maintain, it's a small company to begin with, but we were able to maintain the staff throughout the situation and up until now. We do have to travel periodically, so we took very heavy precautions for that. We test our employees regularly. In fact, that's something that I really appreciate from the Chamber of Commerce reaching out to us, where we should shortly get the first self-test kits available. We've had 2 employees, myself included, have received our first vaccination. Will be done mid-April. Most of the rest are younger, so we have to wait for their turn. So it's nice to have the test kits here. We were very open and honest with the employees, many of whom have extracurricular activities that could theoretically have put them at higher risk. For example, jiu-jitsu, several of the employees do, which is, it's not just a gym activity, but it's an in-your-face activity. And we talked to them and explained to them that as a small company, having 1 or 2 employees out could be very, very difficult. We have employees who have chronic health issues who are at high risk. And it's a close-knit company, a close group of employees, and everyone made the decision to either forego those activities or to minimize them. My daughter, for example, shoots competitively in 4-H, TYAS, and SASP, pistol and rifle, and we had to limit some of that participation. I coach. It's all outside, so we reduced the size. 4-H for a year was shut down because we didn't want to bring any risk of bringing the disease back into the workplace, not just for ourselves, but for our customers. Absolutely. When we go on site, very strict rules that we don't get near any of them, have to wear protective equipment all the time, instituted better policies for safety gear. We pay as a company, I pay for all the testing, I pay for all the safety equipment.
Well, thank you for doing that. I appreciate that. I love the fact, as I'm just, I had my first shot last week also, so there are benefits for the over 50 crowd right now, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, so let's move on to 2021. So what would you say are your business goals in 2021?
This year, we want to recognize the sales plan that we had in place last year, which we think will fulfill itself, which is roughly doubling our average year's sales between the expansion into Canada. We also have some new products that are very beneficial to the market. We, as a company, have very close relationships. I work with the regulatory entities. So I'm on the code writing group for UL. I work with National Conference of Weights and Measures, ASME, a lot of different groups. So we know that there's some new regulations coming out, and we have the products built to address them. That will be a good opportunity that we couldn't realize last year. So I think this year we want to manage our expectations, but we're quite optimistic to have significant growth. We currently are looking for 1 or 2 more employees for assembly technicians, entry level or skilled, but it's a very niche process that we do for assembly. So a knowledge of tools is critical, but there's not much that they would come from that would really have direct carryover. But we teach that. So we're hoping to grow this year.
Excellent. Excellent. I love to hear that. You've already burned the boats. You know, that's great to hear from a business owner that we're going to grow this year. There's so many business owners that we've talked to and that we hear from that are, you know, still scared, and they're really closed off to, they don't know what's going to happen because so many things are unknown. So I know somebody that's going to be watching this or listening to this is going to find motivation to move forward. So looking at those types of goals, what do you think, or what do you see as your biggest challenge to achieving these goals right now?
One is probably the lack of trade shows and attending functions. So we don't directly advertise, we sell primarily through distributors. So our one opportunity to show new products face to face, to meet potential customers, to work with our distributors, is at the trade shows. Well, all of those were canceled, obviously, last year. The ones this year have been moved off to tentatively the fall. So as opposed to having that introduction up to new customers of the existing and new product line to existing customers in April, in the beginning of the sales year, because we're somewhat seasonal in that most of our customers are the propane industry. So in the winter, they're focused on pumping gas to keep people warm, especially about 3 weeks ago here in Texas. And I have to say, I am very, very proud of how the propane industry rose to that challenge. I have a lot of friends who either are all electric, or they have natural gas, or they have propane. You know, there's 13,000 plus propane companies in the United States. There's the big guys that most people know, Suburban, AmeriGas, Ferrogas. They're big customers of ours. But there's also lots of mom and pops, small single store entities. And they really came together to support each other. When supply was in a tight demand, rationing started at Mount Bellevue, you had competitors that were making deliveries to their competitor's customer. No one tried to steal anyone's customer. They just made sure everybody had enough gas.
Love that. That's the way it's supposed to be.
So it was really good. So now our trade show and our exposure opportunity will be going into the 2021-2022 winter. So that's a challenge significantly. What is always a challenge for us is finding good help. We hire periodically, but we go through a lot of high rollover. With currently 2 of our best employees, which we know we won't keep, are actually young people, quite young, which has been very difficult to find good work ethic in the younger people. I know that sounds really cliche nowadays. Unfortunately, it is a reality to find people that are going to show up on time, committed, have a good work ethic like the 2 that we have right now. We've gone through probably 8 or 10 employees in the last 3 years that you invest 6 to 7 months of training them, and either they leave or it doesn't work out and you have to let them go. As a small, growing, young business, we're limited in what we can afford to pay people. We try to pay very fairly. We reward people who are long-term and committed. We have a lot of intangible benefits that most of the long-term employees really appreciate, and that helps. But finding the new people that are going to be here long-term is a real challenge as well.
Well, and I totally understand that. That was a big part of our conversation yesterday as we put about 30 business owners through a planning process. And, you know, do you have, and this maybe is for another time, but Do you have a set process and a recruitment policy that you use for the company? Or if not, we can talk about that another day.
It's not specific. Some of the employees we found through other employees. Some of them we have found through friends or neighbors. I'm always cautious about family and friends, but for the most part, it's worked out well. And within the company, long-term employees have formed some very long-lasting friendships. It's very interesting. We had a sign posted. We're located on Shell Road.
Yep, I know exactly where you're at.
Right where that industrial is. So we had a sign up for 14 months, starting in fall of 19, that said entry-level help wanted, light assembly. It went up, let's see, I guess it was December of 19, right at the end of December, early January. We had a few inquiries, not many to speak of, that saw it driving by. We talked to some recruiting entities. That sign stayed up starting from about February, mid-February, when it was clear there was a problem and everything started to go into place with the restrictions. Not a single inquiry until 48 hours after the extra unemployment money stopped.
Interesting.
So I'm fairly apolitical. To be honest, I don't really care for either side. I vote by individual. But it's very interesting that we had no interest in starting employees until the extra unemployment money went away, which personally I think was very important to a lot of people. But friends of my wife, I know that they wanted to go back to work. On the other hand, they're homeschooling their children, which was very difficult, and they would not make as much money if they went back to work. However, again, I think it's very much needed. It's needed now. It's really, if you take the work life out of it and look at the personal life, we didn't go out that much to begin with, but it's heartbreaking to see how the entertainment industry, it's like one single niche of the economy has been devastated, in many cases destroyed. And it's really tough to see.
It really is. And I'm smiling with you because that is a very common response we get from business owners like yourself. And we can talk about that all day long, but that is a spot on analogy. So let's just switch gears for a minute. So it has been said that smart people learn from their mistakes. However, wise people learn from the mistakes of others. What mistakes have you made along the way that can help others learn from?
You don't have enough time.
And I got my closet of mistakes locked over here and bolted shut. So
I have, I guess one thing I've learned, this isn't the first business that I've run, but it's a lesson that I've learned multiple times now running a business. That the biggest SOB you'll ever work for is the one you see in the mirror. That rings home every day. It's a challenge. However, the reward is great. Don't be over ambitious, yet don't be too cautious. There's a very fine line between being way too cautious and not taking a chance. If you don't put something at risk, there's no reward. So financially, there are challenges. The business that we're in does require quite a bit of investment in research and development, as well as certification for both safety and weights and measures. That's a tremendous expense that when we introduce a new product, we go into it eyes wide open. That's going to cost us, whether that product turns out profitable or sells enough to justify it or not. So a fine line of balance between a conservative approach to managing the business, especially in lean years, in a limited budget, but still reaching out and taking a chance. I guess another lesson I've learned is, as a small company that can't afford the benefits that attract the best people, the intangible benefits, like I mentioned before, make quite a bit of difference. I didn't realize that until talking with some of the employees several years ago, that, what can I do in lieu of a 401k in lieu of paid medical benefits, things like that. And getting that feedback back from the employee with some ideas. If you did this, if you did that. And it's a good balance of cost versus the impact on retaining the employee. So that's been valuable.
Excellent.
I've made plenty of mistakes that I've learned some from. So it's hard to count. In terms of partnerships and document everything properly. I've had partnerships over the years that were on gentleman agreement. You went into business together because you were friends. When those partnerships didn't work out real well, it's sometimes challenging to remain friends. I've always tried to see there's business is business, friendship is friendship, and still maintain good relationships when those partnerships didn't work out. But it's very critical to have extremely well documented foundation.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You really can't do anything partner-wise based on, we're friends, it's a gentleman's agreement. It has to be structured right. And in the end, both parties will see the value in it. So that's been a pretty big lesson learned as well.
I love that. I love that. I always tell every business owner, you need 3 A's. You need an action coach, an accountant, and an attorney, because all of those will keep you out of jail at some point. So lastly, to cap off the interview, we want to ask you one final question. And you've been very inspirational listening to you today, but what is most inspiring to you today, Robin?
In general?
Yeah, in general, what is most inspiring to you today?
I think seeing now that we're coming out, we hope, God willing, the COVID situation, it's been so politicized and such a divisive element in our society. And I'm starting to see more and more people put that behind, coming together for the common good. I think that the storm was a very good example of that. I'm not originally from Texas. I'm a transplant, but a very proud transplant. And I look at how the people themselves handled it. It's so difficult for so many people. I had employees that had no electricity or water for a week. 2 of them I brought in and they stayed with us. I had friends, the same position. Fortunately, we were well prepared as a family, but were able to take food and help other people, some that we knew, some that we didn't know. So to see how people came together through that crisis, businesses helping each other out, my landlord coming, are you okay? Do you need some help with rent to postpone things? Vendors. We've just been tremendously blessed in all our relationships. Vendors giving extra terms. Customers who are big and weren't impacted heavily, willing to pay ahead of terms when things were tight. Employees willing to work together. This has, I think, brought out the best that we can be, not necessarily brought out the very best in us as Americans, but showed us that we're capable of much, much more. And
that is wonderful. That is absolutely wonderful. And, as a transplant, also only being here 3 years, I can tell you that I moved from Iowa to get away from the blizzards, and we had more snow here. I was sending pictures to my family. They're like, what's the big deal? Are you going out to give driving lessons? I was, and it's just, like I said, people coming together, neighborhoods coming together, people supporting people. I really appreciate you saying that. So I'll end with this. Again, thank you, Robin, so much for your time today and your words and stories to help other business owners grow their business. Again, if you're watching this, I'm Coach Andy O'Brien with Action Coach Wilco. And again, we guide business owners to have the freedom to grow their business. And if you would like to share your story, or you know of anybody that needs to share their story to get it out, visit us at our website at actioncoachwilco.com.
Thanks for your time, and I'm happy to participate.